Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 275 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is the power of positivity. Our quote of the day comes to us from Winston Churchill. The positive thinker sees the invisible, feels the intangibles, and achieves the impossible. It is my privilege to bring you today's episode. I've known our guest for over 20 years, and I'm honored to be able to call him one of my closest friends today. Fred Quartlebaum is all about positivity, and I know you will enjoy what he has to share with us today. Q, I'd like to welcome you back to the No Quit Living podcast.
Chris, it is exciting to be back. I'm looking forward to it. Anytime I have an opportunity to add value to a podcast like this, it just brings nothing but joy to me. So thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. And we've changed the first question that we ask since you've been on a while back. And the question now is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
Chris, every day, lunch pail and hard hat, plus the toolbox.
Ooh,
every single day.
I like that. Say that again for a second.
Lunch pail and hard hat and the toolbox.
Lunch pail and hard hat and the toolbox. I love it. So, since March in our country, we've had some very trying times, extremely difficult things going on, as well as throughout the world. And you and I have connected on a bunch of different things. And I just wanted to ask, how have you been able to stay so positive during these incredibly challenging times, not only personally, but also professionally?
Well, Chris, when you talk about challenges or adversity, that obviously you mentioned what we're going through right now, I've always looked at it as an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to develop. And the only way you're able to do that is you have to take positive measures moving forward. So I had to come up with a game plan or an action plan to not only keep myself in a positive mindset, but also keep my family and, our coaches, our colleagues, our community as well in a positive outlook. So I wrote down a few things that I wanted to not only impact myself, but impact the people that are around me. And you can only do that with a positive mindset.
No, I think that is so important. And I think it's interesting how you talk about writing things down. And you and I had a conversation, I think, earlier this week when you said that your son, I believe it was Trey, found a journal that you kept from, I believe, 2001.
Yeah, it was 2001. I'm actually going through a little storage cleaning, and I was going through some of my old journals and scrapbooks and came across a journal that dated back to 2001. It just had a quote just about, it was interesting because the quote really evolved around just being good to people. Be good to people. That was the first thing that was written down there. And that was back in '01. Pretty cool. So I shared that with him and brought a smile to his face.
Talk about being kind to people and doing the right thing. That was back in 2001. And there are certain things, and there are reasons why books such as Think and Grow Rich have lasted for almost 100 years, because the foundation of it is exactly just as important today and relevant today as it was then. The medium or how we receive that information, such as via an audiobook or a podcast or video on YouTube, but the same foundation is so important in 2001 to today. But back even when Napoleon Hill wrote a book, Think and Grow Rich, way back, I believe it was in 1936. I think that's when the book came. But I want to change lanes for a second. You and I have had some really fascinating conversations since probably the middle of March when all this stuff started to go down. And you and I had a conversation one day talking about positive change. And I think that's something that is really important, especially during what's going on, not only since the coronavirus, but within the last month in regards to some of the race issues throughout our country and the protests, both violent and peaceful. I just wanted to get your perspective real quick on the importance of making positive change.
Well, I think the positive change starts with, it starts with the mindset. I thought about this today, Chris, and that's actually a really good question. To make positive, to have an impact or to intently make a positive change, you have to fall in love with that concept. I look back to whatever you're passionate about doing, there's a process, but with that process has to come some form of love. So, for example, I use this term for me, like I'm in love with making a positive change. It starts off with my alarm clock. My alarm clock is Charlie Wilson and T.I., and the song is called I'm Blessed. And the word is just so powerful. So I wake up to a positive, it's going to get me in the right frame of mind to start thinking about how can I add value? How can I add positive change to myself? How can I add positive change to my family? How can I add positive change to my community? So I'm already in that mindset about positive change. And I feel to really gravitate and to truly believe in that, you have to fall in love with the process. I love being a basketball coach. So I'm in love with the process of how to become a better basketball coach. I'm in love with positivity. So how can I impact others around me with just nothing but positive love and gratitude? So it's kind of been like my DNA, C-Dub. So everything I do or everything I say to some form, I want to greet that day with love. I want to greet that day with positivity. So I know it's a long-winded answer, Chris, but I think it just comes down to, like I said, I've fallen in love with the power of positivity.
You definitely touched on quite a bit in that answer, and I appreciate that. And that's where you and I have connected over the last 20 years is the power of positivity. And I think John Gordon is somebody that you and I both look up to, and we've read it and had a lot of different conversations about his books. And what I love about John is he doesn't talk about positivity as that quote-unquote Pollyanna positivity where everything is perfect. And when I had John on the podcast a couple of years ago, he and I had an interesting conversation offline after, and that's what he talks about still to this day is he's not always positive every single second of the day. You have to work on it. And I think that's something that people miss is when they look at positive people, maybe like myself, but most importantly like you, I think people assume, oh, well, Q's positive all the time. He always has a great day and everything's perfect. And to your career, the basketball world, anybody who's followed not only your path prior to Kansas, but at Kansas, you've been there for quite a few years. You're not 300-0. You haven't won every game and, had amazing days. It's the tough days. And you said something that was awesome is it's how you choose to start your day. And I always talk about with each guest the morning routine, and we won't go into yours specifically because we talked about that on the last episode you were on. But what you just said is really interesting because I think a lot of people can make those little changes. So I'm going to throw it out to any of our listeners. If you want to start your day maybe with a little bit more positivity and maybe a little bit upbeat or something that's different, to get different results, you have to do different things. So you talked about the song you listened to. So I guess my follow-up to that, also very long-winded, and coming back to that comment for you, is what made you decide to go ahead not only start your day off with a positive song with that alarm clock, but most importantly, why did you choose that song?
Charlie Wilson, I didn't know too much. Obviously, I know him as a singer, know that. He was with the Gap Band. He's had some cool songs. Outstanding. Girl, you knocked me out. I mean, he has some really, really cool songs, but I didn't know his story. I didn't know that he was was a recovering drug addict. Really had some down times in his life, depression, and it goes to here's a singer who we would think just has everything going for him from it's just his celebrity status, all the things that come with being a superstar. But here's a young man or a man that's really struggling with addiction, and just see him overcome it. Talks about the support people in his life, particularly his wife and those that are around him. So in order for him to to overcome some of the demons that he had to surround himself with positivity. He had to speak about positivity. So it gravitated me because, like you said, C-Dub, we want to promote positivity as much as we possibly can, but we also have setbacks, in our lives. We also face adversity in our lives. We also face, trying times in our life. But I think those are the times that really show the true character of who you are and truly what your purpose and what you believe in. Because everyone can be as positive as possible and as joyful and as bliss as possible when things are going great. We all know that. But it's those trying moments, those times where Q gets fired from a job, or you have a setback in your life. Okay, how are you going to respond to those moments? Those are the moments where your true character and your values and your beliefs really come to fruition. So that again, long-winded answer, but I know his story. I love his voice, but to see how he's combated, some of the obstacles in his life, which is so gravitating to me, and it's not a better song for me at this time.
No, I think you hit on something that is so powerful in so many ways. And just going back to you as a coach, the analogy you gave, when everything's going well, when you're winning 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games in a row, it's easy to be positive. It's easy to head into practice with a little, step going as you're going, and all of a sudden, things are quote unquote easier. But just like trying times in life, you learn during those difficult times. It's the adversity. It's when you lose 2 games in a row and you make an adjustment. And I think that's just really powerful that you touched on that. You and I had a really powerful conversation that hit me in a positive way. I think it was probably three or 4 weeks ago, and we were talking about specifically making a positive difference, and we talked about politics and the elections coming up, and you said something that was really interesting to me, and you said, Chris, in the past, I've just voted down whatever that party line is. So whether you're Republican or Democrat or independent, you talked about how you just went down and it was like click, 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 click. And then you said something to me that call, and you said, Chris, I didn't vote because I supported that person. I didn't even know where he or she stood on a lot of issues. And then you hit it just a step further when you said, I made a decision that I need to do better myself. And you were talking about your players making sure they're registered to vote. But when you said that to me, I looked in that self-accountability mirror and I said to myself, and I think I might even said it to you, is I need to do better too. And that hit me because I think that's one of the things that I've taken from everything that's happened over the last 4 months is it's not about blaming somebody. It's not about your fault versus my fault and you have to do it. It's you make a personal decision first. So I just want to see if maybe you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, Chris, this time has given me an opportunity to reflect, an opportunity for me to grow in areas that I, have been deficient at. And that was one of the areas where, and I'm not saying that I know everything and I don't want to know everything. I think learning is the most important way to grow, for each and every one of us. And obviously with the elections coming up, I had to educate myself more, as you mentioned a little bit. It was one of those moments where you just go in, you're a certain party member. Okay, it's normal. You just check, 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 check. But I had to take a step back because not only I'm trying to educate myself, I need to educate my family. I have two boys that are now registered to vote. So I need to educate them. And moving forward, I have our players that are at that time too, where they want to have an impact. They want to have a voice. So it was important for me to understand how the process worked, the different levels, from the local, from the state level, from the federal level. So I've taken time throughout, this time to educate myself a little better, to that my goals or my beliefs are aligned with certain candidates, regardless of their party affiliation. So again, I think this is a time to, the only way we can do this is we're gonna have to do this together. And in order for us to grow as well, that I think the importance of understanding and listening. That's the cool thing about our I think as our human race is, yeah, we are one, but we all have different ideas. We all have different thoughts. We all have different ways about doing things. But I think one of the things that should be concrete, it should be our value system, for us to move forward. And we're going to have to do that together, like love, kindness, acceptance, understanding, listening. That should be our foundation, regardless of our party affiliation, regardless of our color, regardless of our economic background. That should be a standard, regardless. And we're not there yet. I think we still have words of negativity and hate and fear that are trying to combat that. But I truly feel, especially we see the movement of people coming together to fight for doing what is right, doing what's right. And we're starting to see more of that. We're starting to see positive movement in that way. So I'm excited. I'm actually encouraged and extremely hopeful that eventually we're going to continue to move forward in that area, in that direction.
I couldn't agree more. Even though it's been incredibly challenging, you just used the word hopeful, and I'm extremely hopeful. And you said something that I just wanted to reiterate for a second, is it's about love and it's about listening. It's not about hate and fight. And I think for a while within our country, that's the first thing we do, is you are opposed to somebody, whether that's via religious differences or political differences or race or sports teams, fill in the blank. And it's almost like the first choice always is hate and fight. But you talked about love and listening, and that's the one thing that I'm extremely hopeful about, because I've seen some just amazing acts of kindness, but the word I use is empathy. And I think, to your point, I'm extremely hopeful because there are some amazing people that are out there. And I know that you and I have a friend in common, Billy Singleton, and he said something that you repeated on our forum last Saturday, and I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just repeating that, because I think it's super powerful for the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. It really moved me because, as you mentioned, when you turn on TV, social media, you talked about it, that, yeah, negativity sells and people gravitate towards that. But Billy, in one of our leadership calls the other Tuesday, said to us, he says, guys, there are more good people versus bad people in this world. And he's right. He's so right, because, again, we touched on it. You see the movement of people, fighting, and when I mean fighting in a good way, in a voicing in a good way, that equality and justice should be for everyone. And you see white, you see black, you see, just different people just coming along, speaking out, on what's right. So when you have a group of people from all over, from different backgrounds, that are coming forward, no longer being silent about something like this, boy, that brings, again, it brings a smile to my face. And now the thing is, we have to do, Chris, is now we need to act. We need to have an action plan. I think we've discussed things, and we're going to continue to discuss and dialogue and see the conversation that are being taking place, whether it be on TV or some social media platform or even in our offices.
Yeah, I think it's super important now to have that action plan. And I think you said something that really hit to me is, now's the time for action. And we had a really interesting conversation, you and I, probably in end of April, beginning of May of this year. And we were talking about just that specifically is now it's the time to act. And I know there were a lot of stuff going around social media and there was a lot of positive movements. But to your point, I agree 100% is now that it's the time to continue that action. And I think a lot of movements, and there's been a lot of protest and fighting and anger on social media, and usually it lasts for a week or two, and then things kind of die down, and I'd like to say go back to normal. I think this time is different because people are actually seeing the progress that's being made. And I think the one thing that I'm super hopeful for is the first week or two of this hating. It was these protests that were violent and people were destroying property and doing stuff like that. And then over the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's turned into people walking side by side. It's turned into people talking about, well, what can we do next? How should we help this? So I'm really glad that you touched on the action part, because I think it's really important in so many ways. I wanted to change lanes for a minute to something that you've been doing in Kansas near you is you took positivity notes and you created this positivity poll. And I think it's fascinating because I know so many people have reached out not only to No Quit Living, but just all throughout the country saying, well, I don't know what to do, and I don't have the money or the resources, and we can't physically go to people's houses. We can't physically go to offices during this quarantine and social distancing. If you could just touch real quick on the creation of the positivity poll, because I think how you did it and why you did it was super amazing in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, Chris, actually, it was an idea or thoughts being shared with our Positivity Tribe weekly call that we've been doing for the past, maybe 15 weeks. So, it was a conglomeration of ideas and thoughts to really help me, because I was in an area where I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how I can reach out and touch our community, especially with us being with the stay-at-home orders. So just a bunch of ideas, and obviously the No Quit Living notes was a way to get it out to our community. And we just have a telephone pole that's kind of sitting right where is a great path where people walk and want to get out, exercise, walk their dogs, or just do a family walk. So my wife and my 2 boys, Trey and Mason, and myself, we said, you know what? Hey, what if we just take different quotes and just kind of plaster them all over our telephone pole? And it kind of evolved to, hey, let's call it the positivity poll. So it's been awesome. And again, that was an action step that we took, that we continue to take each and every day. Again, it just goes back to a thought, an idea. Now let's put it to work. I would also suggest to you, Chris, or to listeners out there, this is a great way to connect with your community. Another idea would be possibly to, even in your neighborhood, this is a cool deal. There's positive. If you don't have a telephone pole, these positivity notes, just go around like you're the mailman. Just walk around to say, I'm going to do 10 homes a day in my community. Just go by and just put them right at the doorstep. Just leave them there and boom, go to the next house. Go to the next house or the next apartment.
No, I think that it's interesting when you get creative and you think of the ways, and that's one of the reasons why we actually created the positivity notes a while back. Is it's just a one little way to have a positive impact on one person's life, their day, their afternoon, their morning. And I think it was really neat how you touched on 2 suggestions for people to do that. I just think in this day and age, especially with social distancing, things like that, there are ways to be creative. It's not ideal. I don't think anybody enjoys being separated and then wearing masks and all those things that we're going through right now, but there's still ways to impact people. And I think even more so now than ever, we need to remain focused on being positive and helping people and uplifting others and inspiring them. And similar to the title of the 2 forums that we did is, we rise by lifting others up. And the coolest thing for me is every time we've done a note, whether it's ourselves doing it or people throughout the country doing them, I end up always feeling so much better when you put that positivity note on somebody's windshield, or you tack it up somewhere, or I send them out in the mail, and I know that somebody someplace is going to see this. And it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about having a positive impact on their day, on their life. And I think it gets compounded. So you share something with your wife, then your wife shares something with the kids, and then all of a sudden classmates, coworkers, and one simple act of kindness paid forward can positively potentially impact 50 or 100 people. So with that in mind, you and I have spoke about something, and I think you say it better, but something about your tribe and how the vibe are together. And why don't you just touch on that for a second?
Yeah. Actually, I heard my wife say this, and she's so true. Is that your vibe attracts your tribe. Your vibe, So if you have, if your body or your voice or your body language or your smile, if it's giving out that energy and those positive, people are attracted to that. People want to be a part. Like, what's this guy doing? What's this guy eating? What's this guy all about? And it's funny. I got a small story. Being at Kansas, I never forget this story. Is when I was interviewing with Coach Self, Kansas, his biggest concern about hiring me at Kansas was not my credibility, where I've been at and the places I've coached. He said, "Nah, this dude is too positive, man. No, this can't be right. I've never seen a guy like this." And I still remember that. And it was a concern, but that was one of the questions. Like, hey, nobody's that positive. Q can't be that positive. But it's amazing that the people that he started to reach out to, it all came back to Q has abundance of energy. Q is a positive dude. So it was pretty cool. But I think that was one of the stumbling blocks about hiring me. It's like, dude can't be that positive. But you touched on something earlier, Chris, that I love this term is you're right. Small acts of love and small acts of kindness, when you multiply that by millions of people, you're right. It can transform the world. John Gordon talks about this, and he's right. Like gratitude and love, it's like a muscle. It's a muscle, and the more you use it, the stronger it gets. So again, I think you just have to fall in love with doing small acts of love and kindness, because you touched on it. We're looking to touch one person that touches one person that touches one person that touches one person, and sometimes the people that is touching you may not know who that person is, but it's just when you do things together along that line, again, I believe it can transform a world, and I think that's the direction we're going. So we have to continue to move forward.
No, I said it before, and I think you've heard me say it quite a bit. Is small wins lead to huge victories, and the best part about paying it forward and spreading love and positivity is you most likely have no idea what that one act shares to somebody else, what that one act adds or does for somebody else. And for me, that's the best part, because when you do it genuinely for all the right reasons with zero expectations in return, that's fantastic, because then when you put your head on the pillow that night that somebody somewhere is going to have that positivity that you either delivered to somebody else did, or somebody passed it forward to somebody else. So I think that's really interesting. So we're going to change lanes here for a second. And we didn't do these on the first time you were on the show. So we call these our hot seat questions. And the only request we have is that you spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
You have one last meal. You can choose absolutely anything. What do you pick?
Ground turkey.
Favorite smell?
Fresh linen.
Favorite sport?
Basketball.
All-time favorite team?
New York Yankees.
Do you have an all-time favorite movie?
Remember the Titans.
Great flick. Favorite quote?
Favorite quote, got a bunch. My fear is my only courage.
I love that. And then, do you have an all-time favorite book?
My all-time favorite book is by Og Mandino, the greatest salesman in the world.
Awesome, awesome. And then, do you have a favorite singer, group, band, or musical artist?
Got to go old school. Jackson 5, Michael Jackson.
Jackson 5, that's definitely old school. And if you were stuck in a foxhole and you could only pick one person to have your back, who would you pick and why?
My wife of 23 years, Christy Q. No doubt.
If Christy Q is in your corner in a good way, I'm not messing, because I think she could take the both of us together. So before we jump off here, wanted to ask, what's the best way for our listeners to either connect with you or find out more about you? If you wouldn't mind talking about where they can follow you on social media or just in general.
Absolutely. Instagram is probably the best way, at QFit50, at QFit, FIT fit. Twitter was at FQ212. And I'm going to actually share my email address, because again, I love to connect. There's so many people out there that may just have a question or anything like that. So I'm here for you. My email address is fquartlebaum at ku.edu.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And the last question we have for you is the same we ask everybody, is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
I would say this. I would say greet each day with love in your heart. Find ways to spread gratitude, find ways to spread love, and initially start with yourself, because again, your vibe attracts your tribe, and then you can branch off to your family and friends, your colleagues, your communities. And here's the cool thing. I really want you to, I encourage you or challenge you to also spread love and to gratitude to strangers.
I think that's so important. And I think that's something that we need more so now than ever. But I think as we get through this, that's something that we should never forget and we should never stop doing. So I think that is an absolutely perfect way to end today's episode. So I appreciate you taking the time. And I definitely recommend to our listeners that they follow you on social media, because Q puts out some great stuff. So I appreciate it, my man, and I know that you and I will talk again soon.
C-Dub, thanks so much for having me, man. Have a blessed Saturday, okay?
Appreciate it, my man.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to episode number 275. I'm really glad that Fred, or as most of us call him, Q, came back to join us for the second time. Q shared something that really struck me. Your vibe attracts your tribe. I think that is something that we all probably forget at times. Q pointed out that happiness is an inside job, and I love that. He also shared something his friend said, that there are more good people out there than there are bad people, and I could not agree more. Q's parting words were perfect. Greet each day with love in your heart. So my challenge to you is just that. No matter when you are listening to this podcast, in the morning, afternoon, or even possibly the evening, greet today with love in your heart as you greet others with love in your heart as well. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.